Today I'm going to be showing you the most powerful hotkeys in Escape from Tarkov, some of which might change the way that you play this game forever. But first, we need to build up from the basics as it's important to understand how all of this works. Alright, let's start by looking at the weapons and the stuff that's the most important. There are some esoteric things that you'll probably want to wait till the end of the video to see, but there's a lot to pack in, so we're going to start with the most important things first, being weaponry and how you aim. So aiming doesn't sound like something that should be that difficult, right? But as you can see here, when I aim with this RFB with an Elcan on top, you will notice that my reticle is very, very steady. If I zoom in here, it's extremely steady, and that's because I have aim and hold breath bound together. You can see this if I actually remove it, then you can see that the aim is now not very steady anymore. So how exactly do I do this? If we go into the controls, the aiming controls are just down here, and I have aim as you would set it in every other game, right mouse button, and I have it on press. The types of press in Escape from Tarkov are important, and we'll talk about each one as we go through and find an example of them. But in this particular case, having this on press means that as soon as I press the button, it's going to aim down sights. Now I'm going to have to release the button at some point, and this is where the first trick comes in. If we scroll a little bit further down, we will find one here, which is hold breath. Now normally people have this on a different key, Alt or something like that, but I have mine set to 4 and right mouse button, and importantly on release. So what happens here is I hold down right click to aim, and then I let go, and the right mouse button release steadies the scope. And you can see that in practice here. I'll showcase exactly how that's working. Now there are two issues with this. The first one is that if you aren't a toggle ADS person and you're a hold ADS person, i.e. you have your aim not on toggle like I have up here, but you have this on continuous instead, so you go out of ADS as soon as you let go of the mouse button, this doesn't work for you. There's no way that I know to make this actually function if you are a continuous ADS user, which is a bit unfortunate. If you are toggle though, like me, you're at right mouse button on press, then you can have this one done on right mouse button on release, and you can hold breath. The second part of this is the reason why I have another key set is because you can run into problems. So imagine that you're sniping or whatever, and you're sat here for a while. As soon as I aim down sights, I'm now in hold breath mode. I'm wasting my breath. It's a stamina bar that you can't actually see in Tarkov. I wish they would put it in, because that would be nice to see how much breath you've got left, but it's not one that you have. So I've actually got a separate key that I'm not using, which is 4, and that unholds breath if I'm lying down and I want to be in ADS for an extended period of time, because I tend to have more arm stamina than I have breath when I'm lying down prone when I'm sniping. So just avoids that little situation of you suddenly randomly just going out of breath because you've got it bound to that right click key. And you've got to remember obviously to turn it off if you do that too. But now that we've got our aim sorted out, we now need to sort out our actual weapons. And there are better ways of swapping around between different guns, because sometimes you can't remember which exact sling or back slot you put a weapon into. So the next bind basically means that you're not going to have to think about it. You only have to press one key to get your weapon out. So when I'm pressing this to go between the AK-12 and the RFB, I'm only pressing one key. And this is going to be the first press and release combo key that we're going to use. And we're going to use lots of them because Tarkov's keybinds work really, really well for this. So let's go back into the settings again. We'll go down to the weapons this time. So here you can see you've got weapon on sling, which is your main gun. That's the one in the first slot. I have this on 1 with press. This is just normal. There's nothing unusual about this. Now, the trick comes here with the weapon on back. So I have this on key press 2. Obviously, you can change these keys around depending on how you want to do them. I think Tarkov has pistol on 1, and then the other weapons being on 2 and 3 by default. But I like to have my primary gun on 1 and my secondary on 2, and then my pistol on 3. So I've got it this way around, but you can do it how you like. So weapon on back, we have this on 2, but I also have it on key button press 1 on release. What this means is that when we're actually out in the raid, and I've got my primary weapon selected here, if I press 1, nothing actually happens. I've got the key held down right now because 1 on press is this gun. What we've got it set to for the secondary weapon is 1 on release as well as the button 2 on press. So when I let go of 1, it swaps to the RFB. Now when I press 1 again, as soon as I press it, it swaps to AK-12 because that one is 1 on press. So it doesn't matter which weapon I have out, I only press 1 to swap guns. 1 has now become a swap weapon button rather than a select which slot you've got the gun in button, because in combat, if you've got them the wrong way around and you forget, you could easily end up getting them switched up. Now, one of the other reasons why I've got them set around this specific way, so there's one more key for the pistol, and the pistol became slightly more important because you now have a speedy way to get into it. I have my sidearm on 3 and left control. If I need to get my sidearm out in a timely manner that doesn't really matter, then I can remember to use this control bind. But if I want to get it out on the quick method, then I'm going to use 3 instead on its own. So when I press 3, you'll see my arm stamina will leap down because I get my sidearm out really, really quickly. I have control 3 bound in a way that means that if I swap to a different gun and I swap back, that one is slower and doesn't waste my arm stamina. But normally if I need my pistol, I need it right now. So when I press 3, bam, arm stamina disappears, but I get my pistol out quicker, which means I can dispatch my enemies more quickly. This then means the control setup that we've got, we can swap to our pistol really quickly straight away. And then when we want to swap back to either the AK-12 or the RFB, regardless of whether I press 1 or 2, it's going to swap to the right gun. So if I press 2 now, it's going to swap back to the RFB. And then, as usual, if we go and press 1, it's going to go back to the AK-12. So I can actually go back in that very specific instant from the pistol to either gun, whichever one I want to. And then I carry on just pressing 1 after that to go to swap between the two. As a reminder, you can also put specific guns into a rig like this. So if I put this on number 7, I can press the number 7 and pull out the Desert Eagle. So you could do weird shenanigans, like you can put in 3-slot long MP7s and things like that into alpha rigs that've got 1x3 slots and stuff like that. You don't need to have them either in the holster or the sling or the back. You can actually have like multiple guns in a rig if you want and have them bound 5 to 9, just up to you. So you can do some shenanigans with that. It's not usually done, it's a bit niche. All right, so I'm going to swap back to the RFB. We're now going to look at reloading. Reloading also shouldn't be that complicated, but there's also a lot more to think about than you would imagine when you first look at this topic. So a normal reload, we just press R, and that's going to reload our gun. We're going to take the magazine out, we're going to put it in a slot if there's space, and we're going to put the new magazine in. If there's not space, the magazine is going to drop on the floor. Now, there are two different types of reload. There's a regular reload, which is here on R, and then there's this emergency weapon reload as well. This, by default, is set to double press R. The problem with this is that you encounter an issue here around timing. If you set this to double press R, you then end up enacting this double click timeout. What this means is that when you press R, the game has to decide whether you're pressing R or double press R. And so when you press R just once, the game has to wait for a little bit to see whether you're going to press it again, otherwise it could never have the emergency reload work. The problem with this is that it means that every single normal reload that you do, and any action that you have a double press assigned to the same key on, anything that you do with a normal reload is going to have a 300 millisecond delay, which in a firefight is really not what you want. So what we're going to do is, firstly, the double click timeout should be at the absolute minimum. And secondly, you want to change your emergency weapon reload to something else. Usually I change it to either Alt and the button or Control and the button, because then the game knows that you're very specifically pressing that combination and there's no delay. But in the emergency weapon reload one, I actually have left Control and Shift and R. Firstly, because I don't really use it very much, and secondly, because I don't want to press it by accident if I'm using left Control to press another button like Control. If I'm using Control to go from crouching to uncrouch and I accidentally press R at the same time, it's going to throw my magazine onto the floor, which is probably not what I want. So for this one in particular, I have an extra safety net and I have to do Control Shift reload to throw the magazine onto the ground and do the emergency reload instead. So it's just my personal preference. You can put it on Control or Alt or whatever you want. But I think for an emergency reload, throwing your magazine down, I think that you want to have something that's a little bit more niche so that you don't accidentally do it when you don't mean to. For this reason, I don't really use double press for anything that's time sensitive. So let's talk about melee weapons now. We don't really need melee weapons most of the time in Escape from Tarkov, and typically the most time that we actually end up using one is if we're trying to smash through some glass. So on interchange, you run in through the front of interchange, you don't want to use a bullet, so you smash the glass with your melee weapon. On that basis, that means that I have M, which is my melee key, I have that set to just a swipe, so it doesn't even take my melee weapon out. And I have double press M as taking out my melee weapon. Because I don't really care about the latency on this, I tend to just stick with the double press. But if you do care about the speed of your swipes using the normal melee weapon, then when you're pressing M, you could avoid having this delay and put it on Control M or something like that. So when you do press M, it happens straight away without the 300 millisecond delay. But again, that's personal preference. I have that set up in here under Controls, and that is under Melee Attack, which I just have M on press. And then melee weapon, which I have M on double clicks, one of the few things I have double click on. So now that we've done all of the main weapons, we need to look at grenades. Grenades have been simplified quite a lot because of the way that BSG have changed some of these drop-down menus, so I'll show you exactly how they work. The obvious basics is that if you start with a gun and you press G, that's going to pull out a grenade, and incidentally is the grenade that you see up on the top toolbar up there. It's always going to be that grenade. It used to be random, but it's not anymore. It's whatever's set in there, and I'll show you how to set that in a second. And what we do is that we hold down the button to pull out the pin, and then we let go of left click, and that will throw it in a normal way. If you don't want to throw it really, really far, what you can do, and some people still don't realize you can do this, if you hold right click instead, that's going to pull the pin out, and it's going to do a little underarm instead. So left click is overarm throw, right click is underarm throw. Okay, so back in the day, grenades used to get put into your hands based on the order that they were in the rig. Then they were made random, and now it has been made a lot more easy, because if you hold down G and then use the scroll, you have to scroll, otherwise you won't see the menu. You will see the list of all the grenades that you have in your rig that are able to be thrown. This is then going to determine the grenade that is in the top section. So if I have the F1 grenade up there, that's going to be the one that I pull out when I press G. If I put a smoke grenade in there instead, that's going to be the one that I pull out when I press G. So you can basically set the grenade that you want to have thrown up in that top bar to begin with, using that little menu up here, which is kind of nice. You don't have to just use this. You can also bind grenades to different keys as well. So if I use the 7 key now, that's going to pull out an F1. If I use the 9 key, that's going to pull out an M18 smoke. But I think a lot of people either just press G to get out the easiest one, or they use the radio menu to get out the grenade that they have in their inventory. The only thing really to notice and be careful of is that once you've chucked the grenade up here, it may not necessarily be the next one that appears in the list. So you can see which grenade is going to be pulled out sequentially. So this one's going to be the RGD5. After we throw this, it's now going to be the RGO. But it may not be exactly the same grenade. It depends on their positioning within your rig. So just be a bit careful about that, depending on which one you select. Now, all of this is well and good, but none of it matters unless you know how to actually move your character around and use your scopes and zooms properly. So we're going to start with something that is maybe a little controversial, and I've rebanned basically all my keys around this. So I used to use Alt for free look. I don't use Alt for free look anymore because the issue with Alt is that it interferes with other keybinds. You have to really carefully orchestrate your keyboard around not using Alt if you want to use Alt for free look. And I know there's lots of people who've come from Armor, from DayZ, been using Alt as free look for years and years and years, but using Alt like that prevents you from doing the kind of like peek through doorways and stuff that you see the pro guys doing. And I understand if you're reticent to change that after so many years, but what I did was I ended up putting free look back onto middle mouse button down because it just frees up so much stuff on the Alt key. It's unreal. So for example, if you use Alt and E for the smooth lean, which we're going to talk about in a second, and then you free look sideways while you're using Alt, and then you move, you then get stuck in this sideways lean, which is just really, really, really annoying. And then you have to press one of the lean keys to get out of it. If you're using the middle mouse button, then this doesn't happen because it doesn't interfere with the lean key. So I have my free look on this middle mouse button, and then this frees us up to do other stuff. As we were saying, you can now do smooth lean on Alt Q and Alt E, and I have my regular lean on E and Q. There's lots of different people who do leaning in many, many different ways. I have mine set up pretty much as standard by default, but some people, for a start, either swap them over. So it means that if you're doing a right lean peak, that you can then use the Q key for that instead, because you're probably moving in and out using A and D. I find it doesn't really help me that much, and vice versa. So you put this lean, the left lean, onto E instead, because you're probably using A to move out, and it means that your fingers are kind of going opposite each other rather than having to do them on the same side, which some people find a bit awkward. Otherwise, you can do the no general strategy, which is where you put the lean keys on your mouse. So you have them either as like the page up and page down buttons on your thumb. It's normally where people put them if they're doing this. And then you have the Alt Q and Alt E still in the normal places. And then you can lean with your mouse, which is really, really effective. I've not done this because I'm not expected to be a pro player. It's just one thing that you can do if you want. And if you do put them on your mouse, it does actually free up your Alt key to do free look if you really want to. It's just one thing to think about. With the advent of the new scopes and the zooming that we have in Tarkov these days, we can zoom in and out freely. This is another place that I use Alt. So I have Alt and scroll up and down on the mouse to zoom in and out. You can set how fast this goes in and out here. So this is scope zoom adjustment sensitivity. I've actually recently turned mine up a little bit, and I might even turn it up a little bit more. So this is a bit more speedy than it was previously, because it was feeling like it was taking an eternity to go from one to the next. So that's pretty handy. You can do it like that. But you can also still bind Alt and middle mouse button, which is what I've got, so you can click it back and forth. You will make an animation, and there will be a sound associated with this, whereas there isn't if you're doing the smooth zoom, which is quite helpful. But if you do just want to go from min to max very quickly, for example, you can just press the button. In terms of movement, normally you don't actually need the variable movement speed, particularly in Tarkov. You're either at full speed or you're at 0 speed. So I do advise people having a key at least to just take you to 0 speed and then back again to full speed. Sometimes it gets stuck, so it is worth still having a way to move it up and down manually, which I still have on my normal scroll. But I usually use my B key so that I can go up and down. That's an old hangover from Counter-Strike Source. Now that we can aim and zoom correctly and walk about, we also need to be able to jump and vault. Vaulting and jumping got changed, not super recently, but relatively recently. And they added a new option here, which is vaulting over medium obstacles. You can either have this on automatic, which means your character will automatically vault over small pieces of terrain, or you can have it on hotkey so that you do it on your own. The problem with doing it on hotkey is that this defaults to jump being on release. There is a very small delay that you can notice depending on exactly how you use your keyboard and what keyboard you've got, where you might actually miss some of the jumps that you used to do easily. So what I've done is I've got mine set in a different way, because what a lot of people do is they have jump on release and they have vault on space on press. I don't like doing it that way because of this small delay, as I've said. So I have my jump on space and press, and then I also have vaulting on space and left control, which is on continuous by default. You can't actually change this. So basically, the long and the short of this is that if I want to vault, I vault and don't jump. And if I want to jump, I don't vault. So if I'm trying to get over this little piece here and I press Control and space, I do a little vault over it. If I want to jump instead, I just press space normally. If I'm running around and I press Control and space, nothing happens. I don't jump. And if I press it while I'm going up to an obstacle, I'll go over while I'm running. This is really, really handy because it means that I won't jump when I don't mean to. If I do want to jump, it's because it's very purposeful and I'm pressing the space key on its own. So you don't jump when you are not expecting to if you're using it on the hotkey. Whereas if you don't do it that way, it's a bit difficult because if the vault doesn't work, then the release button on spacebar then activates and you jump instead, which I find really, really annoying. I feel like I'm not in control of my character. So I really like control and spacebar for doing this vaulting. And I tried quite a few different keybinds and this is the one that I found really, really handy. One super niche and sort of useful tip, I guess, is that if you're running and you vault over something, you might notice that your stamina bar pauses. So if you vault over obstacles, you can actually go slightly further running than you can without it. Just a random fact for you. We should also talk about shoulder swap as well. Because of playing a reasonable amount of arena, I put this on a plate where I find it easy to access because I tend to find myself using it a lot. And I use it a lot in arena, and now I tend to use it a lot in the base game as well because you get the advantage of the left-hand peak around certain obstacles. So I have mine directly on my mouse. I rebound my controls to make this easier to get to because other things like change fire mode and change tactical devices and stuff, they're just not as important, and you can relearn those things at other times, whereas you're going to use this lean a lot if you do start using it. The only issue with the lean, as we've documented previously, is if you come up to an obstacle, pushes you back over to the right-hand side, and the only way you're going to get the shoulder swap back on is if you go way out from the obstacle and move it back in again. This makes it really sensitive and quite annoying to do these peaks, because you have to reset it further the way you started. It's a bit of a pain. I wish BSG would fix this, but either way, I still think it's worth having lean on just one key, so you can use it really quickly. It's better in point fire, obviously, if you're going around left, and then you go back around right, and then you go around left, so I have it easily accessible on my mouse. But now, we've got all of our weapons and movement mostly sorted out, all of the important stuff anyway. So next we're going to look at healing when you actually get hurt in combat, so that you can speed that up as well and become more efficient with it too. So the first part we're going to look at is the other new-ish additions over the last couple of years for people who might have missed it, which is the continuous healing option. This is another one that's come in this sort of general game list that seems to be ever expanding, and this one is down here. So we have continuous medkit healing. I have mine disabled, and this basically means that I'm in control of what I'm healing at any time. If you have this enabled and you press heal, it's going to start healing your body based on an order, which is status effects first, and then it goes from lowest health limbs to highest health limbs. Often this means that you don't end up getting your head and thorax healed properly, quickly, and early enough, and sometimes you'd want to do that, like prioritizing the thorax over healing a bleed, for example. And so for that reason, I use manual healing and I have the continuous healing off. This doesn't mean that you can't get continuous healing though if you wanted to, which is the reason why I quite like it. You get a bit of a hybrid doing this. So what we're going to do is going to eat a mule, and this is going to hurt our body. I'm going to see us starting to take small damage slowly because you get 1 per second on the mule. And what we're going to do now is we're going to set up our heal hotkeys correctly. This is one that's been known about for a long time, and it's been in all of my other hotkey guides, but I'm going to show you anyway as well, because people always get this one wrong, and I still to this day get people asking about it. And it's one of the reasons why I have 4 set to my unhold breath key rather than any of these items. So what we've got here, we've got slot 4, and I have this set to the number 5. This is on press. I also have slot 5 set to key 5 on my keyboard on release. What this means is that I can have 2 slots in my inventory set to the same button, basically both the 5. So what happens is slot 4 is the press version, slot 5 is the release version. Practically what this means is if you go into your inventory, the moment that I press 5 down, it assigns the hotkey to a medical item. If I keep it held, which I have it at the moment, I can then put my mouse over another medkit or some other thing that I'm going to hotkey, and I let go. That's going to then put it on 5 on release. And you can see that they're bound both here into slot 4 and into slot 5, and both on 5. It doesn't show you the press release thing here, but it just depends on you doing it in the correct order. So what's going to happen now is that if I press 5, because this one was the one I did first, this is on press. If I have a heavy bleed, it's going to heal my heavy bleed. If I have a light bleed, this is going to get ignored, so nothing's going to happen when I press. And when I release, this one is going to activate, and the light bleeding section of the Salewa will activate. If I don't have any bleeds at all, this will get ignored. The release section of 5 will go onto the Salewa, but because I don't have a light bleed, I'm going to get a heal instead. Now, one thing that's really, really advantageous about this, and this means you only need to press 1 key basically, you could put anything on here. So you could put a Calloc and a Grizzly, you could put a Tourniquet and a Grizzly, or a Car First Aid Kit, or whatever in your rig, and you can put the binds however you want, which one you want to activate first and which one you want to activate second. You just have to think about how the order is going to work with those particular items, so you can do it how you like. Now, the important part about this is that because we have the second one, 5 on release, this is the prerequisite to get continuous healing working if you have it set on a hotkey. So if you have the continuous healing disabled, right? So I have it disabled, but I'm still able to use it because of the new dropdown. So the first thing you need to do with this is you have to have somewhere a med key set to release, which is what I have for my actual med kit, which is the reason why this works. So I press and hold 5, So that's going to be now on the Salewa. It's ignored the Kellock, and it's now going to be on the Salewa. I then use the scroll button, and we see this appear. I then get the option to pick from any of these body parts. So I'm either going to pick thorax or head normally, or if there's a particular bleed or something on one of these, then I might want to scroll down and heal that. Especially, imagine if that's on the thorax or something, but usually I just leave that to the priority between the press and release keys. The other alternative is to go full treatment, and this basically simulates what continuous healing does. If I scroll onto full treatment and let that go, that's going to then sequentially heal each body part one by one. You can see it's going to heal the first one, then it's going to heal the next one, and so on. I'm just going to cancel that with a left click, because the issue with this is that you get basically the full animation whenever you're healing up. So one little trick that you can use is you can actually use your packing of magazines to heal yourself back up. Often you'll want to be healing whilst you're repacking after a firefight. And what you can do is when you're in continuous full treatment healing mode, you can use the ammo going into the magazine to cancel the healing animation and make it much faster. So watch this. So we're going to do full treatment. We're going to pop into here. We're going to wait until the HP decreases on the medkit, like that. And then we'll move over some ammo. And again, we'll move over some ammo. Move over some ammo, move over some ammo, move over some ammo. And if you do it right, this basically shortcuts the animation that you have on the Salewa and allows you to continuous heal much more quickly than you can if you just let the animation run out using the continuous heal. And there's really no way to actually make it that quick, even if you're just doing one body part at a time. I know that was a lot of information, so hopefully that made sense, but the long and the short of it is set one button on press, one button on release, and make sure that you do them in the right order. So when you go over your first item, you hold down on the one that you want to happen first, you move over to the second, and let go on the second item that you want to have happen second. The only other one to add here is I changed a specific inventory slot, which was this one here, which is slot 0, which is normally all the way across the keyboard and somewhere that I don't reach. And I have changed this to the tilde key. So that means that if I'm using a painkiller, which I almost always have on my hotbar like this, like Propitols, typically I'm pre-pained all the time these days, but I set that to the tilde key. The reason why I like the tilde key for painkiller is it's normally an emergency get me out of jail free card, and it's right on the edge of my keyboard, and it's not somewhere lost in the middle of the number keys, and I'm going to always be able to press it because I can feel the edge of the keyboard very, very easily. So all I do is press tilde, and that gets my Propitol out. Or any other painkiller that you might want to put in there. Something you want to reach in an emergency. This again is because I don't think the console is very important, so I have that on control and tilde. If I do want to go in the console for whatever reason, because I never really use it. So I've changed that to painkiller because it's my emergency button. Okay, so now we are done with most of the combat and movement orientated keybinds, and we're going to go into some of the more esoteric things that you probably still should set up because they will make your gameplay better, especially in emergency, and that's especially the case for when you get a jam. Now, hopefully this gun jams straight away, otherwise we're going to have to go to the hideouts. Let's see. There we go. So we got a jam on this AK-12. It is pretty scuffed. I just bought this off the fleet with 31 durability or 31.9 durability. So this thing is jammed almost immediately. Now, normally people have two different keys for this setup, and I have got one of these press releases set up for this as well. So if we go up, we'll be able to find this. And this is a combination of the check chamber / fix malfunction key, which I have on B on press, and the inspect current weapon, which I have on either L, because that just is where you show yourself the gun, or B on release. And the reason for this is that inspecting and fixing a jam is a two-part process. The first part happens with the check chamber or fix malfunction to find out what kind of jam it is. So I have that on B on press. And then the second one is the inspect current weapon button, which is the second part of it. And I have this on release because it means that I can basically do it without having to hold down the key. There's two philosophies when it comes to this. The way that I do it is that I press B like this. That's going to have a look at it. And then you get the notification in the bottom right, malfunction, failure to eject. I then press B a second time, and my guy takes it out. You can have these the other way around. So I've got mine on press release in that way. So I have press associated with check chamber and fix malfunction, and then I have release on inspect current weapon. By the way, if there's nothing wrong with the gun, he just checks the chamber. I still have L set to inspect the gun itself. So there's no real overlap there. It doesn't cause any problems. But what some people like to do is instead of this, they have this one, which is the inspect current weapon. They have that set to B on press, and then they have check chamber fix malfunction set to B on release instead. And what this does is that it means that you basically hold down the button to check the chamber, and then after the animation is finished, you then let go, and it will then fix the gun. Problem is, if you do it too early, you're going to just check it again and again and again and again. Neither way is absolutely perfect, but I prefer being able to just press B and then run around and then press B again to fix it, rather than press and hold B, because I find B bit awkward to press. You know, if I'm like in a firefight and my gun is jammed, I don't want to be like pressing B, like holding B while my guy checks a thing and then waiting for the perfect timing, then letting go of B so that it can fix the jam. I really don't like doing it. I like just being able to hit B, you know, run, sprint while the guy's checking it, and then press B again to go and fix it. So that's the reason why I have it that way around. People do just differ because of personal preference on which one they like. So it's up to you. Play around with both, see what you prefer, and fix it based on your preferences. Another random one that speeds up looting significantly is the discard key. So some people have it on delete. That's the default, I think. I have mine set to my mouse button, so one of my top mouse buttons. So when I'm looking through other players' inventories and that kind of thing, I could just, you know, press, just get rid of loads of stuff really quickly. Other ways that I've seen people do it is having it on left control and click. That works relatively well because you can just press left control and go click, 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 and that means it doesn't keep a key on your mouse bound just for discard, but I like it on my mouse. That's my personal preference. Another one that I've seen that's kind of interesting is doing left and right click being discard. So you hold down left click and then you right click as well. And those two together will then discard. So again, that frees up your control key completely. You don't have to do anything either with your mouse or with control. So I quite like that one. I'm thinking about it, not sure if I'm going to change it because I don't really have anything else I want to put on my mouse right at this moment. But it's another one potentially that looked kind of interesting when I was scrolling around through the internet. An old classic that most of you probably know at this point is this one here, where instead of having check time, there's one which is check time and exits, which is the same one, which is this. And it's basically the same thing. There's no point just checking time on its own. You may as well check time and exits together. So you just put O on press for this rather than having this on double press. Just ignore check time. There's no point having that. And then one of the other few keys that I have on double press is the drop backpack. I have that on the Z key, or the Z for those Americans out there. Double press Z and you get the backpack thrown onto the ground. I don't want to press this by accident, so I don't have it on a modifier key or anything like that. But double pressing it in a firefight, I don't care about the latency, so it doesn't really matter. I don't use Z for anything else because I hate using Z. Some people use it for prone and stuff like that, but I don't. So I don't use it for that much. I use it for random modifier keys like this. So that's definitely good, and that will help you in a firefight. So if you suddenly see somebody, you can just drop your backpack down, and then you're nice and light to be able to do a fight like that. And the way that I ended up combining my Z key with other stuff is that I was using bipods with Z. So I actually do have toggle bipod on Z and left control because it's not something that I use very often. So I just press left control and undo the bipod. And then when I'm lying down or going near something, you can do this without bipod, by the way, on things like this surfaces. I just have Z on its own. If you're not eligible to go on that surface, you see the little icon down in the corner with the bipod, which says no, you're not allowed. It's like a red bipod icon. But yeah, on that one it did work. And you can see the icon there. So I'm mounted onto this particular piece of terrain, even without having a bipod on my gun. So it is still sometimes useful. Not always, but occasionally. You can also use that to mount around walls as well. Same key. I just have them all bound to the Z key. People don't use this that much because being stationary like this in Tarkov is normally a death sentence. It's very, very niche in particular circumstances you're going to want to use it in, but you have it there just in case you do. So one that was more important previous to VoIP, but some people still use it now for memeing, is double press Y. This then takes you into this particular menu, and you can put these on the various F keys. So if you want to put sniper onto F11, you can. You basically just right click on the voice line that you want and click on the particular keybind that you want to have. You don't need to do this in game anymore. You can now do it from the settings menu. If you go into controls, there's actually phrases, so you can do it here, but this only works in the menu. It doesn't seem to let me do it whilst I'm in raid. But if you're in raid, you can do it through this menu instead, the double press Y menu. Right, a final random one that I've had in previous videos before people don't know how to do is I have some of these things disabled. So I haven't really talked about the stuff I don't have, but things like sidestep left and right, overhead blind fire, I just don't use these very much. I don't think the sidesteps are that good anymore, and the overhead blind fire is weird and it kind of combines with other keys. It used to be better, but BSG did something to it and that doesn't really work very well. So I have these unbound, but there's no way to actually unbind a key in EFT, which is really, really weird. So the way that you do it is you basically just bind something else to that same key to overwrite it and then set that key back to where it was before. So say, just for argument's sake, I wanted to unbind move right for whatever reason. I'm going to go to move left. I'm going to change this to D. That unbinds move right, and I'm going to put move left back to A again. That's basically it. There's not a better way of doing it, unfortunately, unless you're going to mess around with your controls config INI file or whatever. So that's just the easiest way to do it if you're in this menu. So I'm going to set that back to normal so I can actually move and raid, and we'll move back to the stash for the final set, which you're still going to be interested in because they're going to allow you to use your inventory in a much more efficient way. All right, if you stayed with me this far, then commendations to you, but this is going to allow you to use your inventory more efficiently. The first ones that, again, people know and used to be more important in the past, but you might not if you're coming to the game new, and there are some new people coming at this point. To identify items like keys, there's few and far between these days, but to identify them, you can just press middle mouse. You don't need to go right click and identify because there is still an option, right click examine. Middle mouse is also useful in the inventory in ways that you might not expect. So flipping and lowering both NVGs and face visors on helmets, and also folding weapons. So you don't have to right click fold and unfold anymore. you could just middle mouse button. Now, the basics of inventory management goes like this. Control typically moves items from one stash to another. So if I do control and click on the TC2001, this is left click, that's just going to move it from my stash into my bag, or my bag into my stash. This depends on the type of item. So if it's a piece of ammo, it's probably going to go to my rig instead. Whereas if it's a piece of equipment, it's going to go into my bag. Using Alt instead, if an item is not within my actual person, then it's going to go onto my head. So even if it's in your bag, you press Alt click, that is going to put the helmet on. This is very handy when you are looting enemy players. You use your discard key to throw it onto the floor, and then Alt click to equip a particular helmet that they've got on. So you can get rid of your helmet and insurance for it and put theirs on super fast. Now, when we're getting a little bit more complicated around inventory management, you'll notice that when you open up these bags, you have this little magnifying glass window up here, which is a golden color. If I open up two, only one of them can have a golden color at any one time. And this is part of the priority window system. If we go to game, it's another one of these myriad things here. And here we've got priority window, and there's a few options. You either have it disabled, which I don't think is a good idea. You have it automatic, which is what I have, or you have it on manual. And what this means is that basically, you can only have one priority window at any one time, and that is the container that things are going to go into. If you have this set to manual, when you open something, you have to click to set this as the priority window yourself every single time you open anything. Whereas on auto, it means whichever one is the one that was previously opened, that's going to be the next priority window. Why is this important? Well, if you want to put stuff into a particular bag or something, you open up the priority window, and now when you're using control, rather than it going into your player's inventory, it will now go into the bag instead. This is extremely handy, especially for filling things like ammo cases. If I go over to an ammo case that is kind of empty, and I scroll up to the top and I see I've got a bunch of M61, I can now, because this is the priority window, I can hold down control and I can click all the M61 straight into the ammo box. This really helps for clearing up stuff, especially around cache as well, or moving items between different junk boxes. You can open one junk box and open another junk box. You can click into the one that you want to be the priority window. So for example, I can click over here. You got to click into an empty space. Like clicking on an item doesn't work. You've got to click on an empty space there, or onto the headline. So if I want to move a gas analyzer over here, I can control click there. If I want to move it back, I control click here. So this is really good for inventory management. The other option that I definitely would recommend having is this one here, which is double click item quick use in raid only. This means you can double click on a piece of food in raid and it won't show up with this, for example. It will just eat it instead. If you have this in both places, if you don't do it just in raid only, if you double click this, it'll instantaneously eat it. In raid, this is much less of a problem because it's an animation that you can cancel, but in the stash, there is nothing stopping you from just completely chugging that can of condensed milk, or even worse, destroying an entire bottle of moonshine with a single click with no animation and no warning. So keep that to in raid only. It's for your own good. The final one that is really handy is with the sorting table. You can find this up here, and this thing can be resized, by the way, by putting an item in and just dragging stuff into the bottom corner. So this thing can be as big or small as you like. And this doesn't count as stash space, but it has to be sorted before you leave the inventory, because you can't just use it for free storage space. It's just for moving things around. This one has its own special hotkey, which is Shift. And when you shift click stuff, that goes into the sorting table. So you can use a combination of Control and Shift and Alt to move stuff either onto your player, into the sorting table, or between containers. And using all of those things and getting used to it and building up your muscle memory means you'll be a million times faster in the inventory, and you'll be able to get into raid and play more games without faffing around with your stash. So as I said at the beginning, this is just a guide as to how you might want to do it. Everybody's control systems are going to be very different depending on the games you've played previously and what you're comfortable with. So use this guide not as a you need to use this key for this particular thing, but it's ideas around how you can use this stuff. And Tarkov is not exactly that easy at understanding what is possible. So now that you know what you can do, go away and build yourself your own control system that's going to work for you, that allows you to be more efficient in raid and utilize some of these techniques. With that said, big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.